Captain Elena Petrova knelt in the Afghan dust, her weathered hands methodically sorting brass casing from the morning's training exercise. The metallic clinks echoed across the forward operating base as she worked, each piece carefully examined before being dropped into separate containers. Her olive drab uniform bore no indication of her true expertise, just another face among the support staff keeping the war machine running. Master Chief Garrett Blackwood emerged from the Tactical Operations Center, his massive frame casting a shadow across Elena's workspace. The SEAL team leader barely glanced at the woman hunched over her task, his attention focused on the mission briefing clutched in his scarred hands. His teammates gathered around the equipment staging area, their voices carrying the confidence of men who had never failed a mission. Before we dive deeper into this story, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you've witnessed military families in your community show unexpected courage when others doubted them. Elena continued her methodical work, unaware that within hours, these same men who walked past her without acknowledgement would desperately need everything she had learned in 20 years of military service. The morning sun climbed higher, casting longer shadows across the base as the day that would change everything began to unfold. The mission briefing tent buzzed with tactical discussions as Elena delivered fresh intelligence reports to the operations table. Lieutenant Commander Sofia Castellanos spread aerial reconnaissance photos across the surface, pointing to the narrow canyon system that would serve as their insertion point. The terrain looked treacherous even from satellite imagery, with razor-sharp rock formations and unpredictable wind patterns. Elena paused beside the table, her trained eye immediately recognizing the atmospheric conditions visible in the photographs. The cloud formations and terrain features suggested severe downdrafts and crosswinds that could prove deadly for aircraft operations. She cleared her throat softly, attempting to contribute her observations about the flight hazards. Blackwood barely looked up from his tactical planning. "Just make sure the coffee stays hot and leave the flying to the professionals," he said dismissively, waving her away from the briefing table. His teammates chuckled, returning their attention to insertion timelines and extraction coordinates. None of them noticed the flash of recognition in Elena's eyes as she studied the canyon walls, mentally calculating approach angles and escape routes with the precision of someone who had navigated far worse terrain. Elena stepped back from the table, her expression remaining neutral despite the condescension. She had learned long ago that revealing her true capabilities too early often created more problems than solutions. The SEAL team continued their planning, oblivious to the decades of combat aviation experience standing quietly in their midst. Colonel Marcus Thorne entered the operations tent as the final mission parameters took shape. His weathered face carried the gravity of someone who had orchestrated countless dangerous operations, and his presence immediately commanded attention from every person in the room. The mission profile called for precision air support through terrain that had claimed 3 aircraft in the past 2 years. Elena organized communication equipment nearby, her movements efficient and purposeful as she prepared backup radio frequencies. When Castellanos mentioned the need for close air support in the canyon system, Elena quietly suggested alternative approach vectors that would minimize exposure to ground fire. The canyon's unique acoustics would amplify engine noise, potentially compromising the element of surprise. Blackwood turned toward her with barely concealed irritation. "We have actual pilots for flight planning," he stated firmly, his voice carrying the authority of someone unaccustomed to challenges from support personnel. The other SEALs nodded in agreement, their confidence in standard operating procedures unwavering despite Elena's subtle warnings about the terrain's unique challenges. Colonel Thorne's eyes lingered on Elena for a moment longer than necessary, a flicker of recognition passing across his features. He had read classified files that most personnel would never see, reports that detailed impossible missions accomplished by pilots whose names were redacted from official records. Elena caught his glance and nodded almost imperceptibly, understanding passing between them. The pre-dawn darkness enveloped the base as the SEAL team conducted final equipment checks. Elena manned the communications station, her headset crackling with radio chatter from various operational elements coordinating the mission launch. Technical Sergeant Raphael Okafor worked beside her, running diagnostics on backup communication systems that might prove crucial if primary channels failed. Blackwood's team moved toward their insertion helicopter with the practiced efficiency of elite operators. Elena monitored weather reports streaming across her console, noting atmospheric pressure changes that indicated worsening conditions in the target area. The meteorological data painted a concerning picture of increasing wind shear and reduced visibility that could complicate both insertion and extraction operations. She attempted once more to relay the weather concerns to the mission commander, emphasizing how the canyon's geography would amplify these conditions exponentially. Her recommendations for delayed insertion until atmospheric conditions stabilized were met with impatient dismissal. Blackwood's voice crackled over the radio, suggesting she focus on maintaining communication links rather than second-guessing mission timing. Elena exchanged a knowing look with Okafor, who had begun to recognize the depth of knowledge behind her seemingly simple observations. The helicopter rotors spun up in the distance, their rhythmic thumping growing louder as the aircraft prepared for departure. Elena's fingers moved across her console with practiced precision, ensuring all communication channels remained clear for what she increasingly suspected would become a very complicated morning. The first signs of trouble emerged 40 minutes into the mission as Blackwood's voice crackled through the communications array with increasing tension. Elena monitored multiple radio frequencies simultaneously, tracking the SEAL team's progress through the treacherous canyon terrain that she had warned against during mission planning. The atmospheric conditions she had predicted were manifesting exactly as her meteorological analysis had indicated. Castellanos reported unexpected enemy positions along the canyon walls, their defensive setup suggesting prior knowledge of the insertion route. Elena's weather predictions had been accurate, with severe downdrafts forcing the insertion helicopter to drop the team nearly 2 kilometers from their intended landing zone. The SEALs now faced a grueling approach march through terrain that offered minimal cover and maximum exposure. Okafor watched Elena's reactions carefully as she processed incoming intelligence reports with the analytical precision of someone far more experienced than her current assignment suggested. Her fingers danced across communication controls, maintaining crystal-clear contact despite increasing electromagnetic interference from the canyon's mineral composition. When radio static threatened to break communication links, Elena seamlessly switched to backup frequencies she had prepared hours earlier. The situation deteriorated rapidly as enemy reinforcements moved to surround the SEAL team's new position. Elena's earlier warnings about acoustic amplification proved prophetic as enemy forces used the canyon's natural sound properties to triangulate the team's location. Blackwood's confident voice from the morning briefing had been replaced by clipped, professional reports that barely masked growing concern about their increasingly desperate tactical situation. Desperate voices flooded the communication channels as Blackwood's team found themselves pinned down in a narrow section of the canyon, with enemy fire pouring from elevated positions on both sides. Elena listened to their tactical reports with growing alarm, recognizing the classic signs of a well-orchestrated ambush that had turned their insertion zone into a killing field. The SEAL team's superior training meant nothing when caught in such disadvantageous terrain. Castellanos transmitted urgent requests for immediate close air support, her usually composed voice carrying the strain of someone watching teammates fall under concentrated enemy fire. The standard air assets stationed at the base responded quickly, but their pilots took one look at the canyon's impossible approach angles and declared the mission beyond acceptable risk parameters. The combination of narrow walls, unpredictable wind patterns, and enemy air defenses created a scenario that violated every principle of safe aviation operations. Elena watched the tactical display with the calculating gaze of someone mentally plotting flight paths through seemingly impossible terrain. Okafor noticed her intense focus as she studied approach vectors that the other pilots had immediately dismissed as suicidal. Her fingers traced possible routes across the topographical maps with the confidence of someone who had navigated similar challenges before. The radio crackled with Blackwood's increasingly desperate situation reports as enemy forces tightened their encirclement. Standard rescue protocols had failed, conventional air support was impossible, and time was running out for 8 of America's finest warriors trapped in an Afghan canyon that had become their potential tomb. Elena rose from her communication station with deliberate purpose, her movement catching Colonel Thorne's attention as he coordinated increasingly desperate rescue attempts. She approached his position with the quiet confidence of someone who had made a difficult decision, her eyes fixed on the tactical display, showing the SEAL team's deteriorating situation. The conventional rescue options had been exhausted, leaving only choices that no reasonable commander would consider. "I can get them out," Elena stated simply, her voice carrying an authority that seemed to emerge from nowhere. Colonel Thorne studied her face carefully, recognizing something in her expression that transcended her current assignment. When she requested access to the base's A-10 Thunderbolt, several officers exchanged confused glances, unable to reconcile the quiet support technician with someone capable of flying the military's most demanding close-air support aircraft. Thorne's response surprised everyone in the operations center when he immediately began authorizing Elena's request despite obvious protests from other personnel. His knowledge of classified personnel files allowed him to see beyond her current role to the legendary pilot who had voluntarily stepped away from active flying status years earlier. Elena's hands moved across the flight authorization paperwork with practiced efficiency, her signatures revealing security clearances that most people in the room had never seen. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable as Elena's entire demeanor shifted from support staff to combat pilot. Okafor watched in amazement as the woman he had worked beside for months revealed capabilities that redefined everything he thought he knew about her background and expertise. The radio frequencies buzzed with confused chatter as word spread through the base's communication networks that someone named Ghost had been cleared for immediate aircraft deployment. Blackwood's voice crackled through the static, demanding to know the identity of the pilot crazy enough to attempt a rescue mission through impossible terrain. His team's situation had deteriorated beyond critical as enemy forces closed their encirclement with methodical precision. Elena moved toward the flight line with purposeful strides, her transformation from support personnel to combat pilot becoming more apparent with each step. Captain Isabella McKenna, monitoring aerial reconnaissance, transmitted updated intelligence about enemy positions and weather conditions that painted an increasingly grim picture of the challenges ahead. The canyon walls created a natural funnel that would force any aircraft into a gauntlet of concentrated anti-aircraft fire. Okafor followed Elena's progress through multiple communication channels, beginning to piece together fragments of conversations that revealed her true identity. References to previous impossible missions and whispered mentions of a pilot who had earned legendary status for flying where others feared to go painted a picture that completely contradicted her months of quiet service in support roles. Castellanos transmitted another desperate situation report as ammunition ran dangerously low and casualties mounted among the trapped SEAL team. The woman they had dismissed hours earlier as unqualified to contribute tactical advice was now their only hope for survival. Elena's voice finally broke radio silence as she confirmed aircraft preparation, her call sign of Ghost sending recognition rippling through experienced personnel who remembered stories they had thought were exaggerated legends. Elena approached the A-10 Thunderbolt with the reverent confidence of someone returning to a familiar sanctuary after years of exile. Her hands moved across the aircraft's exterior with practiced precision, conducting pre-flight inspections that revealed an intimate knowledge of every system and component. The ground crew watched in amazement as she identified potential issues and made adjustments with the expertise of someone who had pushed these machines beyond their design limitations. The cockpit welcomed her like an old friend as Elena settled into the pilot's seat, her fingers finding controls and switches through muscle memory that transcended her time away from active flying. Engine startup procedures flowed through her movements with choreographed perfection, each step executed with the confidence of someone who had performed these rituals hundreds of times under combat conditions. The twin engines roared to life with mechanical precision that seemed to respond to her touch. Radio communications filled with professional acknowledgments as Elena ran through final system checks that demonstrated her exceptional piloting credentials. Her voice carried the calm authority of someone completely comfortable with machinery that most pilots approached with cautious respect. The A-10's instruments responded to her commands with immediate precision, weapon systems coming online under her expert guidance. Okafor monitored her communications from the operations center, finally understanding why Colonel Thorne had authorized her mission without hesitation. The transformation from quiet support technician to combat pilot was complete as Elena requested clearance for immediate departure. Her aircraft taxied toward the runway with the purposeful movement of a predator preparing to hunt. Elena's A-10 disappeared into the canyon system at an altitude that defied every principle of safe aviation operations, her aircraft skimming below the tree line with precision that seemed to violate the laws of physics. The narrow walls closed around her like a granite tunnel as she navigated through passages barely wider than her wingspan, using terrain features that other pilots would consider insurmountable obstacles as tactical advantages. Enemy positions erupted in confused panic as her aircraft materialized from directions they had deemed impossible for aerial attack. Elena's weapons systems engaged targets with surgical precision, her cannon fire eliminating anti-aircraft positions that had been methodically destroying the trapped SEAL team. The sound of her engines echoed off canyon walls like thunder, announcing the arrival of salvation to 8 warriors who had begun to accept their fate. Blackwood's voice crackled through the radio with amazement and disbelief as enemy fire that had pinned his team for hours suddenly ceased under Elena's devastating attack runs. Her aircraft maneuvered through spaces that seemed too narrow for passage, pulling gravitational forces that would incapacitate most pilots while maintaining accuracy that bordered on supernatural. Each pass eliminated multiple targets with efficiency that redefined close air support operations. The canyon walls that had trapped the SEAL team became Elena's allies as she used their geometry to approach from unexpected angles and disappear before enemy forces could respond effectively. Her flight path wove between rock formations with the fluid grace of someone who had spent decades mastering the art of impossible aviation, turning the terrain from obstacle into weapon. Elena's final attack run demonstrated why her call sign had become legend among those who knew the truth about impossible missions accomplished in classified operations. Her A-10 screamed through the canyon at speeds that pushed both machine and pilot beyond normal operational limits, eliminating the remaining enemy positions with precision that seemed to defy human capability. The aircraft pulled gravitational forces that would render most pilots unconscious while maintaining weapon accuracy that cleared the extraction zone completely. Castellanos coordinated the team's movement toward the cleared landing zone, her voice filled with professional admiration for flying skills that had just saved 8 lives through sheer impossibility. Elena's aircraft provided continuous cover as the extraction helicopter descended into terrain that had been considered too dangerous for rescue operations. Her presence overhead transformed the tactical situation from hopeless to successful with surgical efficiency. The SEAL team reached safety as Elena's A-10 made one final pass through the canyon, ensuring complete elimination of threats before departing the area with the same impossible precision that had characterized her entire rescue operation. Blackwood's radio transmission acknowledged the debt they owed to someone whose capabilities had been completely invisible until the moment of crisis revealed her true nature. Elena guided her aircraft home through morning skies that seemed almost peaceful after the intensity of combat operations. The base appeared ahead as ground control cleared her for landing, their voices carrying newfound respect for someone they were only beginning to understand. Her wheels touched down with perfect precision, completing a mission that would be discussed in whispered conversations for years to come. Elena emerged from her aircraft to find the entire base assembled on the flight line, their faces reflecting the transformation that had occurred during her impossible rescue mission. Blackwood approached with measured steps, his previous dismissiveness replaced by the profound respect of someone who understood exactly how close his team had come to never returning home. His salute carried the weight of gratitude that words could never adequately express. Colonel Thorne stepped forward with a smile that acknowledged the secret they had shared, his decision to authorize her mission vindicated by results that would be classified but never forgotten. The assembled personnel witnessed Elena's quiet acknowledgement of their recognition, her demeanor returning to the humble professionalism that had hidden her extraordinary capabilities for months of routine duty assignments. Castellanos and the other surviving SEALs gathered around Elena with expressions that mixed amazement, gratitude, and newfound understanding of the woman they had so completely underestimated. Their morning dismissal of her tactical suggestions seemed like events from another lifetime, replaced by recognition that expertise often wears unexpected disguises. The base's atmosphere had shifted permanently as everyone processed the revelation of who had been working quietly among them. Okafor approached with communication logs that documented the mission's success, his earlier recognition of Elena's unusual knowledge now explained by the extraordinary display of skills they had all witnessed. If this story moved you, share your thoughts about your favorite moment or character, or tell us about someone you know who showed hidden strength when it mattered most. Elena's legend had emerged from shadows into recognition that would follow her for the remainder of her distinguished service.